Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
It was one of those bitterly bright days, the kind where the sun makes no room for grief. The air was sharp, the wind cold, and the ground hard beneath my feet as I stood at my mother's graveside. My hand clenched a folded piece of tissue, not that it helped. Grief didn't come neatly, mine was a slow implosion, starting somewhere behind my ribs and spreading outward like a collapsing house. She should have been here. Emma, my wife. She knew what today meant. She knew. I hadn't spoken to anyone in hours, not really. Just brief nods to my sister, a few murmurs to the minister. I had nothing to say. Not with this war going on inside me. Not with the sound of soil being tossed over the coffin like it was punctuation on a story I wasn't ready to end. That's when my phone buzzed. I didn't want to look, but I did. I'll never forget what I saw. Sorry I couldn't be there. Everything okay? No punctuation. No emotion. Just detachment. I stared at the message like it was from a stranger. Sorry I couldn't be there? My mother was dead, Emma. Not late for brunch. Not sick with a cold. She died. And you're on a beach somewhere, sipping something in a pineapple. She had called it a wellness reset, a pre-booked girls' retreat that she couldn't back out of, even after my mom's sudden collapse. She told me her friends had planned it for months, that her mental health had been strained and she needed the recharge. I hadn't questioned it then. I was too numb. Too distracted by hospital rooms, cold waiting chairs, for bags, and the finality of a last breath. But right now, as the last of my family walked away from the gravesite, as the crowd dispersed and the air filled with silence, now I questioned everything. Emma hadn't even asked if I wanted her home. She just made up her mind and left. She'd sent a single email to my sister with her condolences and had the audacity to call that support. Then she vanished into some ocean breeze, unreachable for days except for a few generic, "Hope you're okay" texts. What was worse was the contrast. I remember when we first met, how she would wrap herself around my arm at the smallest family events. She was always eager to impress, always the one helping my mom clear the dishes after Sunday dinners. She used to adore her. And now she couldn't even be bothered to show up. I stood there alone, staring at the mound of earth still being shoveled over what used to be my mother. My phone still buzzed in my pocket with well-meaning messages from people who didn't know what to say. But not from her. Nothing else came. Just that one, throwaway text. And the picture she'd posted that morning on her story. Some palm trees. A coconut drink. #healing. I almost threw the phone into the dirt. Instead, I slipped it back in my coat and exhaled slowly. It wasn't just this. It had been building for months, maybe years. The emotional distance. The lack of effort. Conversations that felt more like negotiations. Smiles that never reached her eyes. At first, I blamed the stress. Her work, my mom's declining health, our long hours. But maybe it wasn't stress. Maybe it was indifference. Or worse, disinterest. The kind of disinterest that doesn't happen overnight. I glanced up at the overcast sky, feeling like I was breathing through a cracked windshield. My mother was gone. My wife was absent. And yet, somewhere deep under the hurt, something else had started to take shape. Resolve. I didn't know what I would find yet. But I would find something. Because that text, those 6 casual words, told me all I needed to know. She had already checked out. She thought I'd just take it. That grief made me weak. That distance gave her cover. But what she didn't know was that standing here, right now, I wasn't breaking. I was waking up. Grief and suspicion are a dangerous mix. One gnaws at your heart, the other at your sanity. Emma came home a week later, tan and glowing like she'd spent her days wrapped in sunlight and silk. She walked into our house as if nothing had happened, set her duffel bag down at the door, and sighed dramatically like she had just endured some grand ordeal. She didn't even say my mom's name. "Hey," she offered, tossing her sunglasses on the table. "Sorry again about the funeral. It was just bad timing, you know." I didn't answer. Not right away. I just looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in what felt like months. Everything about her was different. Lighter. Relaxed. Like she had shed a skin while I'd been dragging mine through the dirt. She leaned in to kiss me, but I turned my head. "Oh," she said flatly. "Still mad. Still mad." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just said, "Jet lag must be tough. I'll let you rest." She took that as a pass and disappeared upstairs with her phone in hand, thumb tapping away like always. I sat down on the couch, the silence in the house so heavy it made my ears ring. I didn't even know what I was waiting for, an apology? A sign of remorse? Nothing came. Instead, that night, while she slept beside me with her back turned, As she always did now, I got up and went to her office. Her work laptop was locked, but her personal one? Not so much. Old habits die hard, and Emma was never great with passwords. I tried the name of the island she'd posted on Instagram last summer, Tulum 23. Unlocked. I didn't go looking for proof of infidelity. I was just looking for answers. For anything that could explain how a woman could abandon her husband at his mother's funeral and feel nothing. Emails, receipts, calendar invites. All of it felt normal until I clicked open a file labeled Travel Itinerary, Wellness Retreat. Inside was a PDF showing bookings for 2 flights, transfers, resort packages. Not a group wellness thing. Just a single room, king bed, beachfront suite. My breath caught. The name on the booking next to hers wasn't a girlfriend. It wasn't even a name I recognized. Jason Langford. There was no emergency contact information for him. No context. Just a neat little line next to hers on every page of the itinerary. I sat there staring at it, a buzzing in my ears so loud I thought I might pass out. My hand clenched the mouse like it might crack. I got up and walked to the bathroom. She had left her beach bag in the hallway, the kind she only used on real vacations. I unzipped it and found receipts, a crumpled room service menu, and a pair of sunglasses I'd never seen before. But what really made my stomach flip was the necklace. It was delicate, gold, with a single sapphire teardrop. It used to be my mother's. I had given it to Emma on our 2nd anniversary. She wore it only on special occasions. She hadn't worn it in over a year. But in one of the beach selfies she'd posted while I was burying my mother, there it was, gleaming against her collarbone. Like a trophy. I put it back. Closed the bag. Stared at the mirror for a long time. It wasn't just the betrayal of presence anymore. It was a betrayal of soul. She hadn't forgotten the necklace. She'd chosen to wear it there. On that trip. With him. That was the moment I stopped grieving her absence. And started planning my exit. I didn't confront her. Not yet. I needed more. I needed to be sure. And if Jason Langford was more than a travel buddy, I'd find out soon enough. So the next morning, while Emma was still asleep, I texted an old friend from college, a tech guy who owed me a favor. I told him I needed help digging up the name Jason Langford. I told him I needed to know who my wife really went to paradise with. And I told him I wasn't interested in getting even. I was interested in being done, with the truth on my side, and no loose ends. Emma must have thought she was clever. She came back from her so-called retreat with a new tan, a lighter step, and no intention of looking me in the eyes. She was all fake normal texts, laundry, passive dinner conversations. Smiling just enough to keep up appearances. But that's the thing about people who live inside their own illusions. They think if they pretend hard enough, no one will notice the cracks forming. But I noticed. I said nothing while I waited for more from my friend. I played it smart. Let her think I was distracted. Broken, maybe. Grieving my mother too deeply to connect dots. Meanwhile, I kept digging. Late one night, when she was out under the excuse of catching up with a friend from yoga, I walked into our home office and opened her personal email again. Her inbox was clean. Suspiciously so. But the trash folder? That's where the rot always hides. There they were, 6 threads between her and Jason Langford. Each one a slow erosion of whatever was left of our marriage. In the earliest ones, she talked about needing space, saying I was emotionally overwhelming and unavailable. She called me heavy, that I had too many feelings. Funny. She never said that to my face. She told him she felt unseen with me, that I was obsessed with my dying mother and forgot how to be a partner. Jason responded like every emotional vulture does, with affirmations, emojis, and stupid little poems. One said, "Let him drown in grief, love. You're already on dry land." But it was the later emails that made my jaw lock. In one, dated just 2 days after Mom passed, she wrote, "The funeral's this weekend. I should go. But honestly, it's the perfect time. No one will question why I'm gone. He'll be busy with family, and I can breathe." I had to stand up. I felt nauseous. She didn't just skip the funeral, she planned around it. I took screenshots. All of them. Sent them to my backup drive. I wasn't going to let her spin this later. I wasn't giving her the chance. The next day, my friend called me. I ran the guy's name. Jason Langford. "I hope you're sitting down." I was. He's married. Lives in New Jersey. Financial advisor. Wife's name is Amy Langford. 2 kids. My mouth went dry. He's not just some guy she met at a resort. He's been in her inbox for over a year. I found an old social media post she commented on back in January. They were in a conference together. Some workshop on mental health for professionals. Of course, mental health. Always the catch-all excuse. They've been meeting up in cities on business trips. 3 different hotels in the last 6 months. Your wife is not a first-time offender. That's when something inside me shifted. I wasn't just shocked anymore. I was angry, but not in the way people expect. It wasn't rage. It was clarity. This wasn't an affair. It was a campaign. Planned, rationalized, and executed while I was planning my mother's care, sitting at her hospital bedside, holding her hand in silence. Emma used my grief as a distraction, and she thought she'd get away with it. Not just the betrayal, but the total erasure of responsibility. The subtle reframing of me as the problem, so that she could keep playing the role of the unfulfilled wife. I couldn't unsee any of it. So I started planning, not revenge. Something worse. Reckoning. I called a lawyer, set up a consult, gathered the emails, the itinerary, the credit card statements. Then I remembered something. An old password she'd used years ago to link her phone backups to our shared cloud. I logged in and downloaded every synced photo she hadn't bothered to erase. There were dozens. Not just of her and Jason. There was one of them in bed, his bare chest, her in a robe. He was smiling. She was biting her lip. Another, Emma wearing my mother's necklace, sipping champagne. Captioned, finally free. The timestamp? The day of the funeral. I stared at that photo for a long time. Not because I needed more proof. Because I wanted to remember exactly what it felt like to see someone you love smile at your pain. The morning I decided to confront her, the house was quiet. Peaceful even. Emma was humming in the kitchen while she scrolled on her phone, sipping from a coffee mug that had wife. MOM. Boss. Printed on it like a cosmic joke. I walked in calm. Focused. Not a trace of the storm behind my eyes. We need to talk, I said. She looked up slowly. That fake half-smile she always wore lately flickered. About what? About your vacation, I replied. Her jaw didn't clench. Not yet. She leaned back casually. What about it? I sat across from her. I know it wasn't a group retreat. I know you didn't go alone. And I know who Jason Langford is. She blinked. Just once. But that was enough. Her hand tightened on the mug, just a little. I let the silence hang. Let it stretch and wrap around her like a noose. Then I slid my phone across the table. On the screen, the photo of her and Jason in bed. The one she thought only lived in her cloud. The change in her face was so slight, so controlled, it was almost impressive. Her expression didn't collapse. It cracked, surgically. Just enough for me to see the truth trying to scurry behind her teeth. You went through my stuff, she finally said, voice low. Of course I did, I said. You were too busy lying to hide it properly. She stood up like she was trying to reclaim power, like looming over me would put her back in charge of this story. You have no right to. Sit down, Emma. She did. Maybe it was the way I said it. Maybe it was the way I didn't flinch anymore. I know about the emails, the hotels, the necklace, the funeral. She exhaled sharply through her nose. This is why I left. You're suffocating. You hold on to grief like it's currency. That hit harder than I expected. But I didn't let it show. I leaned forward. You wore my mother's necklace while screwing another man, and then sent me a 6-word text from a beach. That wasn't grief you walked away from, Emma. That was decency. She had nothing. She tried once more to pivot. It didn't mean anything, okay? It wasn't serious. It was serious enough to skip her funeral, to use her death as a window for your freedom. You were already gone, she whispered. You disappeared into your own sadness. I needed something else. Someone else. I let that sit. Let her feel like she had the last word. Then I smiled. Good, I said. Because now you're going to have it. Permanently. I stood up and handed her an envelope. Divorce papers. Clean. Ironclad. Already filed. She flipped through them with trembling fingers. You can't do this without talking to me. I already did. You just didn't listen. And you think this makes you look like the bigger person? I chuckled. No, Emma. That's the thing. I'm not trying to look like anything anymore. I'm just done. She tried one more trick. Tears. She wiped one from her cheek like she hadn't already destroyed everything worth crying over. I didn't react. I walked into the living room and grabbed a manila folder from the drawer. This is a list of everything I know. Photos. Messages. Hotel receipts. Jason's wife has a copy. His boss does, too. You didn't. I did. I turned toward the door, grabbing my coat. I paused at the threshold, then added, by the way, the house. Not community property. My mother's name is still on the deed. She never transferred it. You'll need to find somewhere else to sleep. Emma stood frozen, the envelope in one hand, the manila folder in the other. I didn't wait for her to scream, or plead, or apologize. She had chosen her path. She called it healing. I called it abandonment. Now she could be as free as she wanted. But not on my time, not on my name, and definitely not on my dime. The house was too quiet after she left. Not the kind of silence that hurts. The kind that settles, cleanses, like the calm after a storm's finally finished gutting everything in its path. Emma didn't fight the divorce. Not really. Oh, she had her outbursts, tearful texts, a few pathetic voice messages saying things like, "You'll regret this," and "I was just trying to find myself." But the damage was done. There was nothing left to salvage. Jason Langford's wife, Amy, turned out to be a decisive woman. We had a long phone call, just one. She told me everything I didn't know, confirmed everything I feared, and then added one more layer. Emma had been in her husband's life for nearly a year and a half. Not just the resort, not just the hotels. It started before my mom ever got sick. That was the final nail. Amy told me she was leaving him, said she'd send me the full email thread between them. I thanked her and told her I'd be doing the same. We didn't say sorry. We didn't need to. The next few weeks passed in a strange rhythm. The house felt emptier without Emma's presence, but oddly, lighter. I cleaned out her side of the closet, not in anger, just practicality. Gave the furniture a shift. Donated the wine glasses she'd insisted on getting for our entertaining life, the one that never quite happened. I found the necklace, the sapphire teardrop that once belonged to my mother, tucked in the back of her drawer. No note, no apology, just abandoned, like it had meant nothing at all. I took it and walked it down to the pawn shop on Eastburn Avenue. I didn't need it. I didn't even want to look at it anymore. But I kept the receipt. Framed it. Not out of spite. As a reminder. Weeks later, I returned to the cemetery alone. No funeral crowd. No fake smiles. No excuses from the people who should have been there. Just me. And her. The wind was softer that day, the trees swaying instead of standing stiff in silence. I stood at her headstone for a while without speaking. Then I said the words I'd been holding in my chest since the day they lowered her casket into the ground. She left us, Mom. On purpose. And she didn't look back. I waited for the sting, but it didn't come. She made her choice. And I made mine. I knelt and placed a single lily at the base of the stone. Emma hated lilies. Said they smelled like funerals. But Mom loved them. Said they reminded her that grief doesn't end you. It reshapes you. I stood and looked out over the hills. The sun was warm that day. A breeze lifted my collar. Emma's social media had gone dark. No new beach selfies. No poetic captions. Jason lost his job, I'd heard. I didn't need to follow up. That part was over. I hadn't told many people about what happened. Let her tell her story if she wanted. People like her always do. They spin the version that keeps their image intact. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need pity. I had something better. Freedom. She sent me a message last week. I miss what we had. I didn't respond. There's nothing left to miss. She took a tropical escape over a sacred goodbye, chose champagne kisses over a grieving husband, and wore my mother's necklace like a trophy while she lied to my face. That kind of choice costs you more than a marriage. It costs you everything. And I'm not the one paying anymore.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.